Welcome to the Read Report of Summer. Yes, this means that we're actually going back in time since the previous video that I did was for the Dojin events in September. So we're gonna go back in time to go slightly more forward in time, which is still a little before the time that we were currently at, so that we can eventually go back forward from there on. Look, okay, the timeline is a little messy right now, but just ignore that fact. You know, nowadays when you think about it, most big movies like the Terminator, they're all just like completely all over the place with the timeline, so everyone is probably already used to it. Don't worry about it. As they said in Doctor Who, time is kind of like a rug or something like that. You know, some of you might be even thinking something like Doctor Who? Exactly. Nah, I didn't even watch it really either. So anyways, let's talk about some of the events I went to back in summer. So the first thing I went to, or I guess maybe it's more like a bunch of things I went to for a specific series, is there was one kind of goonerish magical girl anime series from I think like 2-3 seasons ago, if my old man memory is serving me right, the Gushing Over Magical Girls one. They actually had quite a bunch of stuff going on during summer itself. It was kind of surprising since I didn't expect that series to be popular enough to warrant that much like people trying to collab with it and all. They had a small pop-up cafe which got a space in Nico Nico Chokaigi, I think, somewhere in spring. And then down from there onwards, you also had what I actually went to during summer itself. First of which is a collab with Red at Tokyo Tower, which Red is a bit of a weird one because Red Tokyo Tower is basically this brand for this kind of like very tech-focused VR AR attraction experience thing. It's kind of hard to explain because they just have a wide range of stuff, including like the VR AR experiences I mentioned before, as well as weird like robot boxing things where you put on a mini mech suit and punch each other in the face. A little tech dystopian maybe with that one, but overall you do have a fair variety of stuff going on there, including poker in case you're into that. Don't ask me what tech innovation is going on with poker. They kind of just have it on the website as like experience the futuristic poker, and it just looks like regular poker. It's a very weird thing, but overall the place is known for all of its unique tech experiences, so it felt a little weird to see a collab with, you know, MahoAko and this, just simply due to the fact that the series itself doesn't really have much to do with sci-fi tech-ish stuff. Maybe you could make the weird argument that like, oh, but if tech becomes great enough, you can't tell, you can't distinguish it with magic, so maybe magic is tech but different, or some silly thing like that. But quite frankly, with the way the series is, you know, any form of like AR, VR experience that you could experience of the anime, I feel like it doesn't matter which side of the experience you put me on, I feel like it will be something that would probably have me questioning life more than when the Terminator said that he really wanted to come in the gym. But overall, it seems that what they did there was just a fairly simple-ish riddle mystery solving sort of activity, which is something that they apparently do sometimes at the Red itself on the upper first floor, which it's a little confusing since the way that the attraction occupies space within Tokyo Tower is that it occupies a space on the first floor for its cafe, and then the first floor of the main building, which starts on the third floor of the Tokyo Tower building to the fifth floor. Apparently sometimes they do a bunch of different mystery riddle solving stuff there, and so that was apparently what they were doing this time. Though when I say simple, it's mostly simple in the sense of the execution, but in terms of the riddles and puzzles themselves, it was actually fairly difficult, right? This could just be me being very old and silly and my brain not functioning as well as it used to, but I could have sworn that when I actually tried doing the puzzles on the spot, they were actually getting me quite stuck the entire time. For those of you who are wondering what the entire area is like, simply put, they only use the first of the 3 floors, and you basically have a bunch of points that you have to go to find clues for the puzzle that are on the building itself, and using those puzzles and the hint that is on this piece of paper here, you kind of had to like solve some of the puzzles, which, yeah, the truth be told, I don't really remember how I solved most of this either. I think for some of it, I actually ended up having to use the hints because, like, what am I supposed to take away from this? Like, math equation equals monkey. Like, how is my brain supposed to understand any of that? And I think there was one as well where, like, in order to solve this puzzle in the bottom here, you kind of had to draw a line down from the nose of this bunny all the way down to here and figure out that this is the thing that you needed or something like that. Look, the puzzles were very bizarre. And if you thought that, like, this one sheet was already weird enough, it's like, no, there's a second one. Oh my god! But at least with the crossword puzzle, it was kind of easier, since for the most part, it was just a normal crossword puzzle. What was cool was that the whole thing required you to do it with this as well as your mobile phone. So you would solve for a keyword at the bottom here, and then once you get the keyword, you have to enter the keyword into a app on your phone, and then when you use your phone to get the keyword, you then were given a secret passcode that you had to use on like a little like locked box in the location itself, from which you would get the next puzzles. I tried to do the whole thing without the hint, but the only issue with trying to do that is that you only had, I think, about an hour and a half for the time that you could spend within the space itself, since you basically had to pay to enter and then you could experience all the different attractions there. Unfortunately, this puzzle took so much of my brain power that I think I spent like a good 1 hour trying to figure out everything, realizing I didn't have enough time left, and then panicking and trying to figure out a way to solve everything with like just the last 30 minutes. But yeah, in case you're wondering, no, you didn't get the file or surprise for solving the whole thing. Instead, all you really got for solving the entirety of the puzzle was just this little sticker. So considering how much brain power it actually took to solve everything, I feel like this wasn't very much of a, you know, a prize for solving the entire puzzle. Now granted, they did give enough hints that you could solve it fairly easily, but come on, I feel like they could have given a little more. Although the whole puzzle itself was a fun experience. There were standees along the place as well. I mean, they didn't fully decorate the place with the series in mind. I feel like it would be pretty awkward if they did, since aside from this collab, there was still a bunch of other stuff going on, and you know, since it's a attraction thing in Tokyo Tower, kids and tourists are typically just normally going there, so to have this just full on in the background for the entire place feels like it would have been a little tough. Even the art that they were putting up for the series were all on the safer-ish side, so one of the more family-friendly, if you can even call it that, collabs for the series, I think. Well, it was a pretty enjoyable experience. I feel like I haven't done anything like this in a long time in terms of like this kind of puzzle solving stuff, so yeah, it was certainly a different experience, and I don't even remember this whole Raid Tokyo Tower thing even being a thing until like this, so good job on the series for reminding me of the existence of this V sports thing. You know, it would actually make more sense that this was being held there if the E in esports actually meant something like Edo or edgy instead. That was a horrible joke. But that said, aside from the puzzles on the main building itself, they also had a little bit of a collab drink thing going on at the cafe for Red Tokyo Tower on the first floor. For the collab for that, however, it was kind of weird, since you couldn't actually get the collab drinks and sit in the cafe itself. They were apparently for takeout only. I don't know why they had to make that weird distinction, especially since they were just making all of the drinks within the actual counter further in the cafe itself. But the worst part about all of this is just the fact that the first time I went there, they actually didn't give any form of like carrier for the drink at all. So they just gave me the 2 drinks, and I was just like, oh shit, what do I do now? And since it was kind of late, since I had to go there at night and the place was already closing, and the puzzle took up a lot of time, so it was really late by the time I got everything done. I just like didn't think to ask them if I could get a carrier. But thankfully, you guys know me, you guys know your boy. I'm the guy who's so unprepared for everything that conversely I'm prepared for everything. And so put in this situation where I had just the 2 drinks and no proper way to carry them back, I did what any sane person in this situation would do. I reached into my bag and pulled out the emergency plastic bag that I always have lying around, and I somehow managed to stuff both drinks into the plastic bag and balance it, and then just carried the thing all the way home instead. And yeah, I really do mean it. Like the way back was just literally me trying to balance the 2 drinks within it so it didn't spill out in any way, all the while going on the train and going through all of the elevation, which, you know, with Tokyo Tower, with the way it is positioned on top of a hill, that there was a lot of that. But we made it back home, and thankfully they did make the wrapping on the cup fairly easy to remove, so here you go. You can see it here as well. There's one. Oh my god, bro. You can really tell that I know what I'm doing, can't you? Yeah, because of the fact that I had to carry it all the way back though, it did get a little wet. Very fitting for the series if anything, but because of that it did get a little damaged. But overall, these all were specifically themed to the drinks. They didn't give it out randomized, so whatever drink you ordered, you got one of these. And you also got a bunch of coasters, which I think I actually somehow managed to get a dupe in spite of the fact that there were 6 different variations. So yeah, that's the dupe. There. Unfortunate that there was a dupe, but at the very least with the drinks, those did actually come individually for each drink, and it had a little funny line by each of the characters there, so I would say it was still pretty fine. As for the drinks themselves, they were fine. Wait a minute. That's not. Oh, wait, that is kiwi. The fruits were surprisingly fresh. I feel like that's usually a weird thing with like Japanese collabs where the fruits in the drinks feel like strangely a little more fresh, even though the drinks or the dessert might be a little generic. So overall, I don't have too many complaints with it, although the price was a little weird. And the fact that you can't sit in the cafe and order the drinks, and that there's no sitting place outside the cafe for you to drink, nor a bin for you to toss the plastic cup itself if you finish the drink. All of that felt like very weird execution. I don't know why they had to do it unless they didn't want like smelly Weeb sitting around going like my Kuma waifu drink in the cafe or something. But even then, it's like I didn't really see anybody buying any of the drinks for the cafe's collab, so I don't think it would have been an issue of like space in the cafe being taken up too much. Although with how small the cafe was, I think I can kind of understand them not wanting it to potentially flood depending on the day. Speaking of drinks though, there was also a collab for the series going on at the Animax Cafe over in Harajuku. Yes, this is the one that we've been to in the last video, and I think in the last video as well. So I'll keep it fairly brief. But yeah, for the collab, it was largely in a very similar style with the tapestries and all of that. The food itself, the curry being blue was kind of funny, but I feel like even with that, Sweets Paradise itself did do something like that with a previous collab for a different series, so nothing too special at this point. But overall, the prices were quite fine. I find it kind of weird that the Animax Cafe actually prices its food differently depending on the IP, as you'll see later on this video. But it does seem like depending on how popular they think the IP is, they tend to charge more for everything, including the food itself. So for this one, I'm guessing because of the fact that it's like just an anime series that did fairly well at the time, they just kept it at a surprisingly average-ish price. Although I have to say, the one thing that kind of drove me just a little bit over to insanity was the fact that they were playing the song that was being sung by the idol who couldn't sing in the series itself. So you basically had this going on like every 5 to 10 minutes in the background. Now, okay, I'm no professional music man, but I feel like that is a little not the best thing to have as ambient music in the background. I'm just glad I wasn't bleeding out from my ears while actually enjoying the cafe, and it didn't take away too much from the enjoyment of the cafe itself. But yeah, never do that again. Please and thank you. Cafe art poster. Some of you may have noticed it since I do have one on the board over there behind me if you actually took a pic at it before. Coasters. The standard fare for each item you purchased while you're there. Oh, but one thing that was kind of different was the fact that for the goods that you could purchase at the cafe, they actually gave out fans this time around, which kind of helps in summer, although I feel like I have just too many of these uchiwas as well as the other type of fans that I could possibly want to know what to do with, especially now that we're in autumn. I feel like these might be a little excessive, but they did give this out in summer, so at least it was usable then. And they basically gave them out for every X amount you spend at the store itself instead, for specifically goods and not the food. Aside from those, the Red Tokyo Tower collab also gave out postcards for X amount that you would spend at the store, so you kind of had a bunch of these same art as at the drinks cafe itself. For some reason, I seem to have not gotten a full set, I think, because the variation, like there's just like dupes that are just side by side like this as well, and that seems to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, I do have a full set. Okay, never mind. For some of it, it's like the expression changes are so minimal that it's barely possible to tell, so that feels a little cheap as well. Like,
the cover art is the same.
Can you spot the difference? I can, because I'm a true gamer. Ignore the fact that I took a while to figure that out though. But yeah, aside from all of that, they also did have a like live performance, like Seiyu guest invitation thing, which I think was where they actually announced that there was gonna be a season 2. Unfortunately, I had neither the money nor the luck nor the time to actually go for that one, since you actually had to ballot for a fairly pricey ticket and go down on a very specific weekend to be able to attend that one. So didn't manage to go. But yeah, it was kind of surprising just how much stuff they had going on for this series during the period. That said, one thing I found a little interesting about this specific cafe, in spite of the fact that we have gone to many that have been held in the exact same location before, is just the fact that for this one specifically, they actually managed to get the seiyus, the voice actresses, to come down and sign some of the posters as well as the standees for some of the characters, which, come to think of it, even for some of the bigger, more popular and higher budget IPs that I've seen have collabs in this location, they actually didn't get them to, or there just wasn't this at all in the first place, which makes it feel kind of funny that the one collab where you get the seiyus actually coming down and signing the thing, which if they did it themselves, it's kind of funny that this one Guna series is the one that they actually decided to come down specifically for. But hey, I'm not gonna judge. After all, do that or anything in between. We all got a gun every once in a while. Next up is the Nidigo pop-up store, which apparently happened in Shibuya a little later in summer itself. This one just happened in the basement of one of the random buildings there, so that was actually a little surprising simply due to the fact that it didn't happen in any of the usual major Weeb buildings in Shibuya, which are the Animate or the indie game store that actually is located somewhere else on its own. And instead it was just its own separate thing in a location that was located more in the normie-ish side of Shibuya instead. They had the hand puppet that they had used for some of the previous live streams, as well as one of the life-size figures that they had made previously there. Apparently the rest of the stuff was all in Osaka instead, because they were trying to hold this thing both in Tokyo and Osaka simultaneously, and so you didn't really get to see the other figure as well. And it wasn't anything as grand as the second anniversary, where they actually had like a full walkthrough experience with multiple different like aesthetics going on. That said, quite a lot of the stuff was surprisingly still selling out, and there were quite a large proportion of female fans there as well, which made me feel like kind of out of place as like the one dude there, and then everyone else looks like a Jiraike, like lady person instead. So but aside from that, it was still an enjoyable experience, and it was pretty cool to just see the fact that the series had a bunch of fans around still. I really do feel like I'm gonna fall at some point trying to do this. Maneuvering in and out of this spot is kind of tough, but yeah, they did give out a pretty big like carrier bag for your purchases there. And apparently they also gave out like, I think like a free Kuji pole that you could only get if you went there on a weekday specifically, and it had to be a non-public holiday weekday. So I don't know why they were trying to drive up like the traffic to the store on a weekday instead. I went there on the weekend instead because I was kind of busy, and the store doesn't really open till super late, so it was kind of tough to try to do that, so I didn't manage to. But yeah, overall it feels weird that they even were trying to do that. I feel like it only typically targets the needs who have no job in the first place and who can make it during the weekdays, and it's kind of tough for everyone else. But maybe they had a specific reason to try to drive traffic away from the weekend so the store doesn't choke up with people or something. Next up, what we have is the Blue Archive stuff that I did go to during the period as well, because some of it was actually really far. Like they did have an Onsen collab with Chichibu all the way over in Saitama. And yeah, for those of you who do not know like the extent of how far away that is, unfortunately you don't have a Shinkansen to go there, but it takes longer to get to Chichibu's like Onsen all the way there rather than trying to get to Nagano Station through the Shinkansen. Since with Chichibu they didn't have the, I guess the English word is the bullet train, but thankfully they did still have an express train, so I just took the express train there. Now unfortunately for me, even with the express train, the entire trip still took about 2 hours, so the whole thing was super long. I think I heard from someone else who actually went to the collab that it took them like maybe 2.5 hours thereabout, in spite of the fact that they live like proximity wise closer to Saitama within Tokyo than I do, and that was because of the fact that they actually took the normal train instead of the express train. So thank fucking god I didn't do that. I think for mine it was like 2 hours 40 minutes if I had taken that train instead of the express. So it really is a very long trip. Initially I had planned for it to be a 2-day trip, but the issue was that over the entire period there wasn't really a good time for me to take an entire weekend off and just tour Saitama for the weekend instead. But then again, you know, as they always say, Saitama, there's nothing there but fucking bonsai trees anyway, so what is there to see? It's kind of like, you know, the funny bald man from that one show, right? Yeah, He's kind of funny, but there's nothing going on the top of his head, as you can see. There ain't much to see. That said, a lot like the other Onsen collab that they had last year, this one was fairly simple as well, in the sense that you had a bunch of collab foods that they were selling at the venue itself. You had a bunch of collab goods that were all over there, being lined up in just a very specific part of the store. There were standees outside the onsen itself, and the ramen bottles actually had unique art, and you could just bring those back. Unfortunately, with the ramen bottles, I think like there was supposed to be multiple different art variations, but on the day I went there, which was somewhere in the middle, I think they may have ran out of like all but one of it. So all of mine just ended up having the same characters one on it. And I think the person who I actually coincidentally met there, who was also heading over for the collab, also had the same bottle. So the likelihood that they just ran out of every other one is, it would be a very strange thing, since you would think that they would randomize it, but it does seem like they ran out of all the other variations which they had initially shown. But yeah, the goods were a little bit of a funny, I guess. You get stuff like this. I don't think this is the kind of thing you're probably going to be wanting to actually wear to a festival outside of like this onsen thing. I feel like if you actually wore this to an actual like summer festival somewhere in Japan, people will be giving you weird looks. Some might even ask their children to avert their gaze from whatever the fuck you're wearing. But aside from that, it certainly would warp the kinks that many kids out there have if they saw this too early. So yeah, this might be tough to wear out. Aside from that, they also had a mini head towel. It really is quite small, since like it's one of those like towels that you're meant to use mostly for your head. They do give out in like some of the onsens once in a while. Unfortunately, this one was actually randomized. I think there were 3 different variations, or it might have been 4. And I was actually considering going back a second time for the onsen collab, but before the, I guess the 3/4 way mark for the event, apparently most of the stuff was already out of stock, so you couldn't even get the towel anymore. They actually stocked it up once during the period, but even that had run out by the time I had planned to go back again. So yeah, most stuff aside from the food itself was gone from what I heard. That said, compared to the previous onsen collab, this one was kind of different in the sense that rather than being in a super large onsen resort, all of this stuff was located in an external area outside of the onsen resort itself, which in a way is kind of nice for those people who just want to buy the goods, since you could just go there, buy the goods, get the food and drinks, and then fuck off and not actually use the onsen, which kind of defeats the whole point of an onsen collab, I feel like. But in that sense, it's more accessible to most people. But when it comes to the onsen itself, because all of this was outside of the onsen, the inside of it was a lot smaller, and it did feel a lot more cramped, simply because there was a lot less open space and there was a lot fewer facilities, or the facilities themselves were also innately smaller, and so you couldn't really do as much per se. You could still go to the onsen itself and just sit around and chill, but the onsen itself was just marginally smaller, although it didn't really detract from the experience for the most part. But aside from that, the rest areas that you could just sit down and chill within the onsen area itself were a lot smaller, and they didn't really have a dark room that you could just like lie in complete darkness instead of like having the sun blend your eyes like in the previous one. So overall, it didn't feel as like relaxing, and it didn't feel as grand as the previous onsen collab, in spite of the fact that I think this one is supposed to have been the one with a bigger name, since it does have an onsen musume mascot where the other one didn't. But even then, it was still a fairly enjoyable experience that allowed me to just shut down my brain, so I have not much in terms of complaints aside from what I just mentioned. Either way, them having ramune for the collab itself just made me feel like a very old man, just simply due to the fact that it has been so long since I last drank it, and having to like push down the thing to get the drink out, it all harkened back to an age like quite far in the past, which gives me a little bit of existential dread. But nonetheless, the experience overall was pretty fun to do that as well. And there was also the Collab pop-up store that was running during that period. I think I talked about this one in the video last year when I was talking about all of the different pop-up stores that they were running for Blue Archive during summer, since there was quite a lot of stuff going on at that time. They kind of did a similar one this year, although obviously the art itself that they're using, the key visuals, are all very different. They didn't use the very Pop Team Epic-ish looking like chibi SD character art, and instead it was just like Meidos, cute sussy Meidos. But yeah, just like last year, there were quite a few figures being showcased there. Many of the upcoming figures that had already been sculpted or that had not been painted yet were all just put on display. Some of it, they had not even begun sculpting the figure yet, so you just had like an acrylic image of the character themselves just there with the text below saying, "Coming soon," but not an acrylic, which it feels like in this day and age with the number of acrylic figures that exist out there, it kind of, you kind of do need to actually like point this out so that people don't get confused with it. But yeah, they did announce quite a few, or showcase some of the upcoming figures there, which was kind of interesting to just walk by and look at all of it. Aside from that, they were also selling a bunch of different goods there, all of which I think you could buy it or pre-order it online as well. So not too much that I actually got there specifically, since it was easier to just look through everything, and because I was going to the Love Live Doujin event after on the exact same day, I didn't want to have to lug all the stuff there and get judged by people who are like, why is this guy bringing all of this like completely unrelated merch to our event? He's a fake fan, we have to kill him, or something like that. I didn't want any of that to happen, so I just got a little bit of stuff there and just went on my way. One of the things, of course, is the drinks that they apparently were marketing there for some reason. It's just a very normal lemon squash that you could purchase through the vending machine, although if you just bought it in the store instead, you could get a full set of all of the different like character art on the can itself. Thankfully, they made it fairly easy to peel off, so I've just temporarily put them on this piece of paper here. Don't worry about the fact that I pasted it on a piece of paper. The adhesive on it is so weak that I could just very easily remove it from the paper itself, so I'll probably remove it and find somewhere else to put it once I can figure out what would be a better way to preserve this without having it stick to something. What I find kind of funny about it is also the fact that just like in the contents of the drink, it just puts like their club name and their name here, so it's like it kind of makes it feel like you're drinking their juice, which is it's just lemon squash, I promise. But yeah, the only thing that really did feel like a limited-ish edition thing there was just the drink itself, so I just bought a full set of it. But aside from that, I didn't get too much else, just simply due to the fact that everything else you could just buy online, and a lot of the stuff that they were showcasing there that looked pretty cool, you couldn't even purchase on the spot, so that was kind of unfortunate. And they also did have a showcase of all the different Choco Ponies for the series out there so far. For those of you who are wondering what a Choco Pony is, it's basically like a Fumo for people who aren't into Toho. So you can think of it as the Fumo at home for everybody else instead. A lot cheaper and a lot more affordable, but it's still fairly cute, although the style of the like face structure and all of the characters design is fairly different from how a Fumo would go about doing it. But yeah, truth be told, I just didn't know that there were already this many Fumos. Like granted, some of them were the same Choco Pony but bigger, and I realized I actually mixed up the words Fumo and Choco Pony there. The Toho gods might smite me down very soon with like a bolt of lightning coming through my closed window over there. But even if that happens, pay no mind to it. This video will find a way to upload itself. Overall, not the kind of place that you would spend a huge amount of time in this pop-up store, but it is the kind of place that I could see myself spending an hour just walking around for the ambiance, as well as looking at all of the different displays that they had going on there. Especially since entry itself was free, so actually not too much of an issue getting in. Thankfully as well, because of the fact that most of the goods were up for pre-order, there wasn't anything on the day itself that was really fully out of stock, except for I think some of the very specific like acrylic stands and the like, but you could just get those on pre-order anyway, so it wasn't much of an issue. And because of all of that, it did feel like the event itself, the pop-up store, was fairly chill. I remember that when I went there last year, it's like you really had to stand outside and queue for a amount of time just to be able to get in, and you had to like pre-order the slots to be at the front of the queue, even for some of the later days. But this time around, I think I went in fairly in the middle and everything was completely fine and most goods were still in stock, so that was pretty cool, especially when you consider the fact that supposedly the player base, according to some of the analytics sites out there, has increased since the second year. So it's kind of interesting just seeing the fact that all of this, when it comes to logistics for how they handle a lot of their collabs and the like for the series, seems to be a lot better than it used to be for many of the other series that exist out there as well. But that's it. That's all from me for today, I guess, because my bed is a mess with all of the stuff. Because let me show you guys what's happening, right? Right now, my bed is just completely in a mess because of all of this, and I really need to clean this all up so that I actually do have space to sleep. And this makes me feel like we have gone through a bunch of stuff today, so we'll leave the video off here for today. But that's it. I do have dupes for some of the stuff, and like as always, it feels a little weird for me to keep dupes lying around as well, so I'll be giving those out on the Discord, stuff like the postcard, yeah, as well as some of the coasters, as well as the fans. I'll put up the list of all the stuff that there is on Discord, because there is quite a variety of it on there. So if you're interested in any of the stuff, do feel free to look out for it over there. But that's it. I hope this video was enjoyable nonetheless. Thank you to the following people for helping to support the channel, and thank you to Hayden the Historian for helping to edit this video. Very epic of them to help. And they do make some very interesting videos about anime in general, including the Uzumaki anime, which I know that after the second episode, it kind of did go a little downhill, but they did make an interesting video about all the other stuff that was made for Uzumaki in the past, so you guys can get kind of a history of all the different things that people have tried to make of the IP as well. But yeah, once again, thank you to all the people who have helped to support the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one. Hopefully, which should be soonish. I don't know whether 2 weeks is considered soon. I've heard that as people get older, their sense of time gets warped because they start to think that everything moves like a lot faster, or like time passes them a lot faster. So maybe it's not as long as I think it is, but it probably isn't. I don't know. But that said, until next time, take care, and
it's all downhill from here. Literally.
Bye-bye.